I believe you can have it all and you do not have to struggle to get it. If life feels hard, your tasks seem impossible, or you just don't like the options laid out before you, I promise you there is a better way. My name is Melanie McSally, your Better Way architect, and I welcome you to the WyzeCast Show. Today's guest is Susan Bloom, who uses her rich combination of lived experience and professional credentials to help prevent burnout and live with more ease and joy. She's here today to teach us about Equine Gestalt and how we might use it to find our better way. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm delighted to have you. I've always wanted to learn how to ride a horse. I don't even know the right terminology, but anyway, and I just never have. So I'm excited to learn a little bit about what you do and how you work with people and things like that. So let's just start right off the bat with what is it? And yeah.
And kind of in layman terms, Gestalt's pretty hard to explain, but in layman terms, I partner with the horses to create transformative experiences for humans through Gestalt, which is a therapeutic modality, team building and leadership and mindfulness. And I do that in individual sessions, groups, and retreats. So we don't ride. Everything is pretty much in the round pen, well, unless it's a group with team building or leadership, but they don't ride either. They might have a horse on a halter. But basically everything is at liberty in the round pen. And we would talk through something and I would come up with what we call an experiment to help bring up whatever past events, be that trauma, whatever it is, to help someone through that, work someone through that. So kind of one of the for instances I use shortly after I was out of the program and about a year after my husband died, I went to a retreat that was done by my mentor and trainer, Melissa Pierce. And I was struggling with, I grew up and had lived in Western Kansas all my life. A town of, I think it's now down to 2,000 or 1,800 people. When I was in high school, there were 2,500-ish. And the closest city, which I think is like 20,000, was 90 miles away. The closest metropolis would have been 250. So you learn when you live in those kind of places that you travel a lot for everything. And I didn't feel like I was close enough to the population that I wanted to serve. And I wanted to move to Eastern Kansas. So I'm now about, depending on where I'm going, about an hour from the Kansas City Metroplex, which is it's pretty big. Which also gave me the ability to go to concerts and theater and stuff like that easier too. And that's lovely. Last week I went to TEDx KC.
Nice.
Yeah. So I had worked with Melissa outside the round pen, and we worked about, the advantages, because there are some advantages to being in Western Kansas, of being there, and the disadvantages, and the pros and cons of being in Eastern Kansas. One of the big disadvantages to Western Kansas is it takes about a day to get there from anywhere. And I guess, and then one of the things that attracted me to Kansas City was I was with my husband in a waiting room at KU Med Center. And I heard what I assume was a student talking to her parents saying that they had a session with the dean that day, and he had said that Kansas or KU Med Center was trying to become a really forefront in medical care because they're a 2-hour flight from anywhere in the US, which I would put a caveat. They might be a 2-hour flight from any major airport in the US, but they are not a 2-hour flight from every airport in the US. And I thought, that's really nice because people can fly in fairly easily, and at that point I was wanting to work with doctors, and I've kind of switched that focus to caregivers, like family caregivers, like I was. And so she set up the experiment, and it's called Polarity, where you have two parts of yourself. In my case, it was the part of me that wanted to go to Eastern Kansas, the part of me that wanted to stay in Western Kansas because it was comfortable and it was easy. And at one point, as I was going through, so you talk to the parts of yourself, they talk to each other. And there's a pole or something in the middle so you can divide what they are. And at one point, I could feel Ruby, the horse that was working with me, just right here on my hip. And it felt like she was going to nudge me over to that Eastern Kansas side. Like, this is where you need to be. You know it. So just make the decision. It did take me 4 years after that to actually sell the land in Western Kansas and buy the ranch in Eastern Kansas where I am now. But that's one of the things that we do in Gestalt.
Awesome. So I've heard that horses are quite intuitive. Is that like what's happening behind the scenes, if you will, in these experiments?
Oh, it sure is. I witnessed another woman who she was struggling with a situation with a family situation. And whenever she was at home, she would get sick. And whenever she was like, they went to see her parents for Thanksgiving, or she went to see her brother, she was not sick. I mean, physically, she was sick. And every time she'd come home, she'd get sick. So the experiment that was set up for her was a square rectangle of flower boxes on the ground. And she was working with a horse called QT. And she was working with Melissa. She went through, several iterations of tell us what it's like in the house. And you could see her body. You could see her body. I mean, it would be like she was in her home and getting sick. And then, okay, so step out of was the box, but the house, step out of the house. And again, you could see her body open up, and it was just so freeing for her. And finally, one time when she was in the house, QT, the horse, went over and picked up the flower box, the end of it with his teeth, and moved it as if he was opening the door, and to say, get out of that house. And I think it was within 2 months, they'd been looking for a little ranch. They found a ranch and had made an offer on it, and had 2 offers over asking on their house that they were selling. So it was like it shifted the energy that much and moved things so that they were able to proceed with the getting out of the house.
So is it like the horse is seeing what the body knows before the mind does?
Yes. it's exactly that. And if you're, because one of the things we do for a demonstration is called math to emotion. And this is, it's something that it's not deep, it's not anything, it's just kind of a demonstration piece. So you have someone walk around the round pen and do simple math, like, 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, just really simple and out loud. And so they're in their head, right? And I had a woman doing that in my round pen, and she was about a third of the way around the pen. And she said, and Patty, the mare, was standing over there by the gate with me, like, I don't want anything to do with her. She's in her head. And all of a sudden, this woman blurted out, "Oh, I feel like I'm in third grade again." And Patty made a beeline. She made a beeline over to her. She felt her drop down into her body, and that was congruent with what she was feeling, not just in her head. And that's one of the things Melissa calls them equidetectors, because we might say something that we think is true,
Mhm.
and we might believe it, but in our heart, it's not. And they can tell.
Nice. So are these special horses? Are they trained in this?
No, they are not. I mean, by this point they are, but basically they're not. You kind of judge. Some horses won't do it because humans have mistreated them enough, or they're done with humans for whatever reason. And others, Melissa calls it their essential gift. She says it's what they want to do. It's what they were born to do. They want to help people. They vibrate at a much higher energy than we do,
Mhm,
and they would like to bring us up to their level.
mhm.
And I'm not sure that's possible, but that's what they'd like to do.
Well, sometimes we don't see our purpose realized while we're in this life, but that doesn't stop us from working towards it.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe some of the horses feel that way as well.
Maybe they do.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about how you got started.
I've always had horses, and my husband was a farmer rancher. And sometimes I say I'm blessed because I chose to marry him, even though I knew I'd be stuck in Western Kansas. Because had I followed the path I thought I wanted to in high school, I would have been in a city somewhere, and maybe I would have still had a horse and maybe not. And so I'd been a farm wife, I'd done various things for years, still had my horses. I showed them for a long time. Um, Still, and I raised quarter race horses. These three that are behind me in the picture are three from that breeding program. And I never lost. I like to say that every little girl has a love for horses. Some of us are blessed to carry that into adulthood. I'm one of those. Um, my grandfather, who kind of started my passion with the horses and gave me ponies and horses, and um, I credit him with a lot of that. My dad was a doctor, the only doctor in our small town for many years. And I I kind of tried many things to work with the horses. I also tried many things that didn't work with the horses. And when my husband was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease, I was actually that day, as he was being admitted into the hospital, I was applying for a job as the tourism director at our local town, which sometimes sucked the life right out of me because there was tension between my boss and the foundation where my office was. And it could be very, very stressful. And then as my husband's illnesses got worse and more complicated, we were traveling and I used up all of my vacation time, all of my sick time. Two of my coworkers gave me over 2 weeks of sick time. And I took off time without pay because we went to Houston, which is 12 or 13-hour drive, three times in, no, 4 times in 4 months or 3 months, for a trial that he had gone into. And I think every one of those trips had a trip to Kansas City in between, and sometimes a hospital stay. So that would have been in 2015. And we have a small museum there, kind of a quirky, fun little history museum and fossil museum. And the woman who was the director, who was having a baby, decided she wasn't coming back from maternity leave. And they were going to combine, well, they did, they combined the museum director and the tourism director job. And my boss kept telling me, well, all you have to do as a museum director is show up. I'm like, not to do it right. And I already felt like I had, it was a full-time job with my husband. And I said, well, it would be a promotion. And I'm like, and with that promotion comes, I would have employees and volunteers that I had to manage. And I wasn't ready for that. So at that point, I left that job. And that was when I started the Equine Gestalt program, which is a 2-year intensive training program. Mostly at that time, it was over the phone, not on Zoom, because that was before 2020 when Zoom became such a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had, I think there were 9 trainings, in-person trainings that I was required to go to. So that was, I could study while we were on the road, listen to the calls, whatnot. Yeah.
Nice. So okay, so for the program, is it mostly for making decisions and doing those kinds of things, or is it also for healing and wellness?
You mean the equine gestalt?
Yeah.
Definitely for all of that stuff. It could be, the decisions could be life decisions, business decisions. And yes, it's very, very healing as far as that goes. There were a lot of people that I went through the program with who had childhood trauma, abuse, sexual abuse, those kinds of things that it helps immensely with.
Yeah. So I know offline we talked about that you have other certifications that you use in combination, like leadership and business coaching and things of that nature. So can you just give me some examples of um, the types of ways you use this combination with people?
Well, the leadership would be those are experiences that you would have like a team go through, or and the horses are good at teaching boundaries, leadership, those kinds of things, because they won't do what you want them to do if you're not in leadership mode. I mean, I have gone out with them, and I went to a graduate corps that was on the business leadership stuff. And they said, okay, well, take this horse out and do this figure eight around the poles. And he didn't want to follow me. Now, I've had horses all my life, and I'm like, oh, what's in, so what's that? I'm sure it was in my head. And if I go out now and say, try to catch one, and if I'm in a hurry or whatever, it cannot turn out well. I've actually had a couple of accidents recently that were not great, and truly my fault, because I wasn't present with the horses. Um,
So
and
go ahead.
and then one of the things as I work through, because I did the business coaching certification when in 2020, and what I would take someone through is guiding them to a vision for personal life, business life, whatever that is, a very detailed one. Working on their communication styles and skills. And possibly some of those things that are keeping them stuck. Because we all tend to have things like that.
Yeah, of course. Um, so I'm curious what it means, like maybe some traits or something. What does it mean to be in leadership mode around a horse?
Well, around a horse, you need to be present
Okay.
with the horse, not rushing, not, and that kind of presence of I'm the one in charge. So you're going to do what I tell you. One of the things that happened is I have a really big horse, and I was closing a gate and had him on kind of a long line, and he went on, and I pulled him back, and he pinned me between the gate and his butt. And I already have an old injury of this shoulder, and kind of crunched it together, and it was not pleasant. And it wasn't his fault at all. It was mine. I'm the one who said, no, get back here. And he said, oh, okay, I'll back up.
Yeah. So like I mean, I'm a complete novice when it comes to horses. But I do have a lot of experience in leading people. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to bridge this gap in my brain. Um, and so I have heard that horses are quite nurturing, and that you shouldn't allow them to sense fear. And these two things butt up in my brain, because when I think about somebody who's fearful around somebody who's nurturing, I think they want to caregive. So so I'm trying to understand about being in the leadership mindset around a horse of because there's some leaders or managers that are more bullying and dictatorial and that kind of thing. And then there's leaders that are inspiring and motivational and things of that nature. So can you help me understand a little bit more about like what you mean with being the alpha in charge around the horse, but like
Well,
what does that mean?
the the um the bullying leaders probably wouldn't get very far with the horse. And mm, I need to step back a few steps. Nurturing and fear. So if I go out to the barn and I'm sad, right? Which here, because I'm alone, that wouldn't matter. But if I had, there was a big barn full of people and whatnot, and I go out and I'm sad, but I don't want anyone to know that. So I'm hiding that from everyone. That's one of those cases where the horses will see that
Mhm.
and say, no, we're not having anything to do with you. Um, until now, if I go out and I'm sad with them, they would very much come to me and sit with me in my sadness, be with me. And so I'm guessing, I mean, fear would be very similar to that. If you're trying to hide it from them, they're not really going to want to have much to do with you. They would rather meet you where you are than to have you out of congruence, not, with yourself.
So
Does that make sense?
is it about authenticity then? Like they
Yeah,
will.
it is. Yeah.
Okay. So when you're saying presence, you're saying like you show up as your full authentic self and let the horse truly see you.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine that would be hard for people in the team building setting because a lot of times we want to hide certain pieces of us from our coworkers or managers or what have you.
Well, and we do a thing called through the eyes of a horse, where you take the person who knows the most about horses to be the leader and you put them in a line, kind of a line thing, where it's kind of like a conga line where they follow each other. And you have someone come in the arena, say on a phone or, whatever. If someone comes into a meeting and they're on their phone, do people want to interact with them?
No.
Doesn't matter if they're the leader. So what you do, I mean, if I would go out, and sometimes I listen to music on headphones, that doesn't seem to bother them. But if I would go out and try to catch one and be on the phone and whatnot, they're not going to want to have anything to do with me. They're like, you're not here with us. Don't do it. And it's the same in the human world. If someone comes into a meeting angry, and I mean, if you go back to the horses, that's if you come in angry, they want to help you through that anger. But if you're up in your head, they're not going to want to. And it would be the same with, again, going into a meeting or if you were the boss and you have someone come in and you're just angry, having a bad day, and try to cover it up, communications aren't probably going to go as well as they would otherwise.
Probably not. Yeah. Unless you're good at containerizing and being present,
Right.
even though you have this stuff going on at home or outside or what have you. Okay, so all right, so let's talk business first, and then we could talk about other uh types of situations where people come to you. So we're leadership training or team building. What are some other like business use cases that people come to you to work through? Um, my my whole premise for this podcast is show people their better way. And what I mean by this is like you can have it all and you can have it your way. And so if people are struggling, this might be a way for them to get through that struggle or around that struggle, or might help them with a solution that they're unaware of. And so let's just give some ideas of, or some examples of how people have come to you to find their better way.
Well, especially in a sense where you have something that's keeping you stuck, that you're aware of in the back of your mind. So, and this is a case that Melissa has used. She had a woman come to her who had a coworker, a male coworker, who would get upset in a meeting and would stand up and slam the table and, say whatever he said, and she would just shut down. And so she came in for a session and they worked through something. And it turns out, as a teenager, maybe, there was a situation in her family where her dad and her brother got into it. One of them stood up, slammed their hands down on the table, and then they got into a physical fight. And she was taking all of that in as the young girl that she had been, and saying, I mean, before, when she came in, she said, I think I'm just going to have to quit this job because I cannot deal with this person. And once they found out what was happening, she was able to go to him and say, would you not do that? And he, of course, was very unaware that it was causing any sort of a problem. And to get some of that, which would be trauma, to get some of that trauma, get that awareness of the trauma and get it in your mind, at least out in the open, was very healing for her. So that was something that was keeping her stuck. And most of the stuff has been about emotional. I also have a sorry, something just flashed up on my screen. I have we have a thing that is, you go through with the horse. You can do it with or without the horse. And, what would you have to believe for this to happen in business or in life? And then what are the actions? What would success look like? And let's celebrate that. So it's a whole around the baseball diamond, basically, of around that.
Okay, so I've heard situational things where leadership training, team building, emotional release, um, limiting beliefs release, like anything that, working through stuck situations. Sounds like it could also be confidence building
Oh,
or
for sure.
different types of like inner, uh, you know, um, change your inner world, it'll change your outer world. It sounds like that. Um, I also get this symmetry between working with the horses and body testing, like this, this whole like making decisions, body testing. It feels so if you're one of those people that doesn't feel like body testing works for you, maybe Gestalt will work for you instead. Um, and then also like working through difficult situations, so like with colleagues or managers or what have you, just sort of unpacking that. Have you ever had like somebody come in and say, I have a problem with my partner or a friend or a colleague or something, and ask to work with just the two of them?
I have not had, I haven't worked with a couple
Hmm.
as of yet. I do think I would have a lot to offer them.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, I was married for 32 years, and like most marriages, it wasn't perfect. Um, and I learned a lot about communications and communication styles, and we did a lot of training in my master Gestaltist program with couples, and how to handle that sort of stuff. I mean, one of the things that became clear to me was that my husband and I had very different communication styles. He, one time, he asked me to do something, and I did it. And when he came back and said, well, did you do that? Yes, I did. So then did you do that? And I said, no, I didn't. Well, why not? Because you didn't ask me to. And he said, do I have to draw you a picture? And I said, apparently so. Now I'm going to say it wasn't quite that lighthearted, but what he saw as the natural next step, I didn't see. And it was the same to reverse it in our house. I always wanted him to help out with stuff around the house, and he just didn't see it. He didn't see that the dishes needed done, or he didn't see that something needed vacuumed or whatever. And so he didn't help unless I asked specifically.
Hmm.
And I did learn how to do that.
Yeah. So now I'm hearing communication, training
Mhm.
and development, relationship, uh, coaching. I don't know what to call it there. And I also am remembering, it seems like it could also help with for understanding what it actually means to be authentically fully present. Um, and I also heard earlier boundaries, which is coming up for me a lot lately, is boundaries and consent. And um, what a great training for that, because I don't know, in my generation we didn't get training on how to give and receive consent and how to set boundaries, and it wasn't taught in school. And I feel like my life would be different had it been taught in school. So I feel like that's also, a great um, personal as well as business training that you offer.
I'm not sure that's been taught in school ever, but yes, the horses are very good at helping with boundaries. I have one, and he's the big one. He's quite tall. Who, when he came to me, I don't think he had. I mean, he really pushed boundaries, and sometimes still, when I'm leading him and he wants to look off this way, and he'll kind of step on the side of my foot, and you have to bring him back. Um, or the other thing he likes to do, he doesn't do it with me anymore, is to grab a hold of clothes with his teeth. And when I first got him, I I don't give my horses treats by hand. A lot of people do, and I used to. And the reason I don't anymore is because they can't be looking for treats from clients. and and he was always, whenever I'd put my hand up to him, wanting to nibble on it. And he still, when he gets, the last time, not actually, it was just the other day, but the time before that, when the horse trimmer was here, and he has one foot that it's really kind of sore for him to stand on, so she can do the other one, or one that hurts. I think she found abscesses in one this time. So it hurts, and he gets tense and nervous, and he wants to chew on something. He's just kind of mouthy. And I'll let him chew on the lead rope, and I let him just kind of get the palm of my hand. And I wear leather gloves because the lymphedema nurses, I had breast cancer and they took a bunch of lymph nodes out, and they think I should wear gloves. And he bit a hole in my glove, in my leather glove. It was like, well, okay. So I wanted to give you some comfort. I didn't want you to do quite that much.
Yeah.
But yes, boundaries are definitely something they can help with. If I were to put someone in the round pen and say, okay, tell him when he's reached your boundary. Who knows? He might be right here because they have no boundaries. Okay, set your boundary. Now tell him when he's reached your boundary. And that could be, it could be as much as saying, look, that's it. You're there. And it could be nonverbal too. I would say most likely a combination of two would work. But because they're going to see the nonverbal, they don't, of course, understand words the way we speak them.
And then what happens when they've set these boundaries? Do they just honor them, or do they keep pushing them to make you reinforce them?
If you truly said it, they're going to honor them. If you don't, they'll push it a little bit. It definitely took me a little bit of time with him. I would get so frustrated, I'd go out to put a halter on him, and he would grab the nose piece that goes over the nose in his teeth. I'm like, no. And I was struggling with that. And I was talking with a coach one day who, she has horses, and she said, you know what to do. You need to set that boundary. And she said, so tomorrow when you go out and do that, set that boundary. Well, I didn't have to. I went out and put the halter on him, and I haven't had a bit of trouble with him since. Because he was like, oh, well, okay. she's not going to put up with that anymore.
Yeah. Well, on the one hand, it's really good training because, you weren't clear. And so when you became clear, he honored the boundary. On the other hand, that's not generally human behavior. So, it's like this controlled environment of like, okay, but now you have to keep reinforcing it with actual humans.
Well, yes, you would. And I'm sure that if you were in the round pen with him and you were wavering on your boundary, he would push it. And once you're clear with it, he wouldn't. And then if you were wavering, he might not.
Yeah. So, still on this topic, but using fear as part of the discussion. I can imagine myself, maybe anyone who's really new to horses. You step up to this animal that's quite larger than you might have fear, right? So, how does one be in their leadership presence, while also feeling this fear of being with this animal that is larger than them and could hurt them, right? Because this is symmetrical to life in dealing with bullies, especially as women or dealing with other people that are larger than them, either physically or just verbally and whatnot. So how does one work through that with the horses?
Well, first of all, at least in a team building or leadership training, that would be a little bit harder. But in an individual session, if you have fear of the horse, you don't have to go in with them. You could remain outside the pen and interact with them that way. It's better if you do, and we can do it slowly. Usually start outside the round pen anyway. And then I also have a pony that I work with. So she's not as big. However, in individual sessions, I like to honor whichever horse comes up and says, I want to work with this client. This is my client. And if that's the big horse, I'd like him to be in there.
Yeah, but I would
Um,
imagine like some people might want to come for that reason, like
mhm.
because maybe they also are having that problem with humans in life, of like really strong personalities and being able to hold themselves in front of really strong personalities. So building that confidence, I guess, is really the question of like how do they work through their fear with the horse and stand in that leadership presence while also having the fear, because it might still be there.
And that definitely sounds like it would need to be in an individual session rather than a group team building type session, because it's not something that would be easy to work with as a group. I mean, unless it's a group Gestalt session, which I do those as well. But you wouldn't want, I don't think you would want your team that you're leading to know that you have a fear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in that case, I might suggest that someone come in for an individual session. We can work through that. If we need to work with Patty the pony first, we can do that. And then, I mean, when I got this big horse, I was very intimidated by him because he's taller than me.
And how tall are you, just for context?
Not very, but 5'6", 5'7".
Mhm.
But I had never had my own horse. I'd seen him and who was that tall. I'd had some that were actually, I rode one that was about 4 inches shorter, but he didn't feel as intimidating. And maybe I don't know. I don't know what the difference was. I know my son's very intimidated by him too. And he's the one who is the good boundary horse because
Oh,
he's big and tall, and but he's the sweetest. He has the kindest eye I'd ever seen.
well, maybe that's his purpose, to help people through those types of confidence situations.
Could be.
Yeah, awesome. Well, tell us how people can work with you, get in touch with you to work with you if they so choose, if they want to.
Probably the best way is through email or through my website. Um, and my email address is Susan B at connectionandsynergy.com, which is also my website is connectionandsynergy.com.
Nice. And we'll put that in the show notes below. So people.
Okay.
Awesome. And do you solely work in person or do you do any virtual sessions?
Actually, I'm working on a virtual communications class, for lack of a better term, a 6 week, I call it a play shop, because we're going to play around with your communication styles and that kind of stuff, that I'm working on. And yes, I can do virtual coaching as well. There's some benefit to having the horses involved, and I can do some of the Gestalt stuff virtually for sure.
Can you do horse stuff virtually? Really? Do you like take the computer?
Well, no, it would be without the horses. They're
That
always present here, so.
it'd be really cool if you could bring your horses on Zoom, especially if they had their own logins.
Well, gosh, maybe I could do that. Just, get some iPads and log them in. I actually did. My father was diagnosed with cancer in 2020, and I hadn't done a big grief piece around my husband, who had died about 2 years earlier. And one of my colleagues said, well, let's do it. And she was in Colorado. And I'm like, first of all, is this going to work if we say this is what we're going to do? And secondly, is it going to work over Zoom? She went out with her horses. I went out with mine. And we literally did. It was beautiful. Now, obviously, not everyone has their own horses they can work with, but it was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you just brought up grief. We actually haven't talked about that. Of you had mentioned to me offline that you're looking to work with people on or you have worked with people in the past on grief and loss, and now you're working with people on reducing overwhelm. So do you want to talk about these two things?
Well, especially with caregivers,
Mm-hmm.
because I mentioned my husband, we had 5.5 years of traveling various places for specialists. We drove over 57,000 miles just for his care, to see specialists and whatnot. And it is very overwhelming to be a caregiver, and you put your person before yourself in almost every situation. And I just I just recently, I'm listening to a book called Passages in Caregiving. And it occurred to me just the other day how grateful I was that I was in the Equine Gestalt program the last 2.5 years of that, because I was also diagnosed with breast cancer during that 2.5 years. It was, first of all, it gave me a purpose outside of caregiving. And I think every in-person training I went to, I said, when we checked in, I said, I didn't know if I was going to be able to come this time, because something had come up. Or one time I came back and he told me that our youngest son, who didn't have a full driver's license yet, had taken him to the emergency room, which was 20 miles away. It's like, he really shouldn't have been driving. I know. So and I think truly one of the best things that I did was when he was in the hospital here in Kansas City. So we're 350 miles from home. we had another son who was at Kansas University, about 45 miles away. And I would drive back there every night and sleep in a real bed and have dinner either with him, or I might get some sort of takeout or whatever. And be able to just kick back and watch a romantic comedy. And I think for my mental health, and I might not even watch all of it because I would be too tired,
Mhm.
just to be able to get away from the hospital. I remember one time, and I'm pretty sure that was, he was in there for almost 3 weeks that time, and he was in the oncology unit. And I was walking out with a woman, and she said, I think her daughter was grown too. She said, I've been here, my daughter's been here 2 weeks, and I haven't stepped foot outside the hospital. And at the time, it made me feel kind of guilty that I wasn't that person. And then I came to see that no, it was better to have at least some distance, and almost every day. And I saw one of his doctors in the hallway one day while I was doing this, and he was in his room later. I would put on my headphones, and they had like tracks on the floors, and would walk. And his one doctor came in one time and said something about it. I said, yeah, if I didn't do that, you would either have me in here in orthopedics or seeing psych, because it would not be a happy situation. And I think a lot of caregivers don't give themselves that out. And to have them, especially like in a retreat or a group setting, to be able to talk about things that they wouldn't with people outside of caregiving, that are normal, natural feelings when you're in it. And they're not if you're not.
And so you're using your experience, your life experience, as well as
Yeah,
your educational experience to help them through their overwhelm, through their grief and loss, through their caregiving. Correct?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And does it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's also sort of like this round circle support group mentality that you're creating, where you have caregivers together and they have a community.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I'm gonna, this is kind of just forming, but I think I'm gonna start with a Facebook group,
Mhm.
and then possibly move it over to school where I can have the communications piece and have different pieces in there a little easier. Yeah.
Nice. Well, best of luck to you on your journey of creating this space, because it's needed. There's so many people out there that are suffering in silence, if you will, because they're pouring out of a cup that they're not refilling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you for helping to refill their cup.
Well, thank you for acknowledging that.
Of course. Of course. I my mission is to raise the vibration to compassion, which, maybe I should surround myself with horses so they can help me. But
Maybe.
but I tend to attract all the people that are also doing that in their own way. And so you're it's a little selfish on my part because you're helping me with my mission by doing it yourself. And so I want to acknowledge you for that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any final words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience?
Hmm. I don't know about words of wisdom. I don't know if I've mentioned I do have big house where I can have small retreats. And that is part of my vision for sure, is to have retreats for caregivers.
Nice. So do you offer both your, or will you offer both your own retreats as well as allow other people to come in with their retreat if, say, they want to partner with you on your services or incorporate your
Oh,
service?
yeah. Yeah. I
Awesome.
would definitely partner with someone. I might even rent out the space, although the horses would probably not be involved in that case.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You shouldn't do that because that's your IP. So you should keep that for
Right.
yourself. um, Feels a little weird calling horses IP, but it's definitely your IP. So, well, thank you so much for this conversation and for enlightening me about horses um, and how we can better partner with them to raise our own vibration. So thank you so much.
Sure. I appreciate the chance to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you everyone for tuning in, for engaging, I'm not engaging, but for participating all the way to the end. If you've made it this far, then thank you so much. And both Susan and I would love a hype, a share, a comment, whatever you want to do to engage. Technology loves this and will pay it forward and share this video with anyone that needs it. So you'll be helping Susan get her message out there to the people that need to hear it. So thank you so much for being here, for listening, and for engaging. So remember, if life feels hard, if you don't know what the path is before you, there is always a better way. My name is Melanie McSally, and I will see you in the next